My Bible is open to Isaiah chapter 4, with the exception of the first verse. That will be our text this evening. Isaiah 4. Hope that you will open up in your Bibles there so that we can get into our God's Word together. It's good to see everyone out this evening. It's always a wonderful thing when we can be together, when we can praise our God together. It is a blessing from Him, and I'm so glad that we get to be with one another this evening. As we get into Isaiah 4 here, and the clicker magically is working this evening. We'll see how long that works. But as we get into Isaiah 4 this evening, I think to call this the glorious branch of the Lord, coming from the text itself, really, I think we're going to see that that is a good title for this section. We are, as anytime you're hopping into the middle of a book, you're hopping into the middle of a context, and we're not picking up all of the context, but if you've been keeping up with the reading, or if you do just a brief skim of chapter 3, you're going to notice that's judgment text. That is God bringing judgment against His people. But it's interesting as we move from the judgment text of chapter 3 into the hopeful text of chapter 4 that we see God isn't leaving it all doom and gloom. God isn't saying, I'm going to come in and just utterly destroy you guys, and I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm just going to let there be utter destruction, and I'm going to let that sit. No, as we move from a judgment text, as we move from God saying, I am going to bring my judgment against you, but having brought this judgment against you, let's look far off into the future and let's see there's hope. Let's see that there is light. Let's see that I am working toward the glorious branch of the Lord. So let's work with that as we hop into verse 2 of Isaiah chapter 4. In that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and honor of the survivors of Israel. I think that we are well familiar with this, but I think it is worth taking the time to break this down and thinking about this branch a little bit, the branch of the Lord, and recognizing that is with absolutely no doubt, that is messianic terminology. Now, this is perhaps not the clearest place that this term branch is messianic terminology, but it is messianic terminology. That is clear inside of the scriptures themselves. If we head to Jeremiah 23 and pick up verses 5 and 6 here, Jeremiah 23 and verse 5, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he shall reign as king and deal wisely, and shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In his days Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell securely, and this is the name by which he will be called, the Lord is our righteousness. And so to see that branch terminology, the branch of David, raised up from David or for David. And so here, the one who is going to come from David, he's going to branch out. He's going to be king. He's going to have rule. And his name shall be called, the Lord is our righteousness. Abundantly clear exactly who that is about. That is messianic terminology. It's the same term back here in Isaiah. The branch of the Lord is the Messiah, and the Jews recognized this. The Jews knew this. In the Targum, now if you don't know what the Targum is, and I didn't, I had to look it up and see. The Targum is an ancient Aramaic paraphrase of the Hebrew Bible. It's kind of a paraphrase, kind of a commentary on the Hebrew scriptures in the Aramaic. And what they put in this verse is they say, At that time shall the Messiah of the Lord be for joy and glory. So they just go ahead and they put the term Messiah right into the text. Who is the branch about? The branch is about the Messiah. And so again, I do think this is a concept that we widely recognize. We read that term, we see that, and we understand that. And coming at it from that perspective, I did not realize until I was studying for this lesson that actually this word translated branch is actually, a good translation of the word itself. But there are concepts happening inside of this word that are difficult to translate. I've shared with you in the past that sometimes when we talk about translations, we use the term glosses, like a glossary that's going to kind of give you a definition of the word. Well, we'll use the word glosses as we talk about translational things. When we talk about, there's not really a one-to-one translation of this word. We're trying to get the ideal of the word, and we'll use several different words so that we can try to plumb the depths of the word and convey all of the concepts that are at play inside of this word. And this is one of those words the scholars all point out and say the concept at play in the word has some translational difficulties there, but they would put it into the term of saying it is a growing thing. And so you can see how branch is actually a really good translation, that which would branch out from something, a growing thing, such as from a plant, a vine, or tree. But it's carrying a deeper concept, not only of a thing growing out, but this idea of new things that would come out, that there would be renewal in the branching out of this thing. One brother puts it into the terminology where he says it's kind of like how we think about spring. You're out there and you're looking at your yard and it's brown and it's dead and there are no leaves on the trees and everything's just kind of dead and ugly. And springtime rolls around and the little green sprigs start coming out of the ground and all of the trees start turning green again. That there's this picture of renewal within this word, that with this branching out, with this branch coming forth, this growing thing, it brings renewal. It brings the sense of that which was dead is now being made alive again. So with that picture, it makes sense that when you hop back into verse 2 and he talks about his being beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and honor of the survivors of Israel. So here is all of this destruction that was wrought. Here is this judgment that came. There was this tearing down, but then comes the branch who brings renewal, who brings life again, so that for those who would remain in Zion, for those who would remain in Jerusalem, his coming is associated with the fruitfulness of the land, is associated with that which was dead turning green again. And so this word branch is carrying a lot of depth there that we would gloss right over, that we would miss if we did not see this and recognize it inside of this context where he is tying these things together. His being the branch, his being this growing thing, bringing this renewal, is connected into the fruitfulness of the land that's going to become the pride of the peoples here. And just so that we can circle back and tie all of this together again, remember, we're looking at the time of the Messiah here. Isaiah is looking forward to the time of the New Testament when the branch, when Jesus would come and do his renewing work. With that then, let's move into verses 3 and 4. And he who is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy. Everyone who has been recorded for life in Jerusalem, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and cleansed the bloodstains of Jerusalem from its midst by a spirit of judgment and a spirit of burning or purging. That word could be translated. And so he says, of those left in Zion, this, a word we're fond of using, of this remnant who is remaining, they are going to be called holy. There are several things happening inside of this text. We're going to reference Zechariah a couple of times as we work our way through this, and it makes sense as Zechariah was looking forward and having visions about the future of the spiritual Jerusalem, that when Isaiah is talking about the spiritual Jerusalem, that they would be talking about much of the same thing. But I was reminded of Zechariah as he was looking forward to the future of Jerusalem, and he says every pot in the city is going to be called holy. The horses are going to have holy written upon them. Everything in Jerusalem is going to be holy. And you remember when we were going through Zechariah, we were making the point, the concept here is that it is everything in Jerusalem, not merely the things, that the tools isolated to the temple, but all of Jerusalem, all of Judah, that it is brought out that all of God's people will have the mark of holy upon them. And that's exactly what Isaiah is saying here. As he looks to those in Zion, as he looks to those in Jerusalem, he says God is going to look at them. He is going to look at his people, and he is going to say, they are holy. Now, we'll return to that here in just a moment, but we need to pick up the next phrase from verse 3 so that we can work with both of these things together. He says, these who are called holy, it will be those who are recorded for life in Jerusalem. Or I believe the New King James says they're recorded for living in Jerusalem, where we are seeing that those who are recorded in this registry, God's book of life, where these are those that God has written down, and he says they are the ones who have life. Going way back to Moses. Moses recognized that God had this book, that he has his people written down in, if we can look at Exodus 32. In Exodus 32, we'll read a couple of verses here. Exodus 32 and verse 32, we read, but now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book that you have written. But the Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. So going way back, Moses recognizes God's registry of God's people, and that there would be those who do sin against him, and God blots them out. God takes them out of his book. What about when we get to the book of Hebrews? As we're looking to the blessing of that which we have come to in Hebrews 12 and verse 23, what we have come to, we've come to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect. Where there is this enrollment, there is this citizenship registry, where what God says is your name is written in my book. That means you are a citizen of heaven. We have to understand, and we talked about this in our Hebrew study on this verse, but I'm going to repeat myself because I think it's so important bringing it back to Isaiah here. We have to understand the significance, the importance of having your name in the city's registry. That means you live in that city. That means you are a citizen of that city. That means you get the rights of being a citizen of that city and the blessings that come with being a citizen of that city. When your name is recorded in the rolls of citizenship, that is showing you get the rights and blessings of citizenship. And that's what God is saying here. Says your name is enrolled in heaven. You get the rights and the blessings of being a citizenship. Your name is written in my book of life. You are enrolled. You get to partake of the blessing of life. Now I think we need revelation here. This is one of those, after we read this passage, it's going to make sense here, I believe, just on its own merit. But we need to hold on to it. I think this is going to become really significant as we get down to the end of our Isaiah text. But look with me in Revelation 21, and let's read beginning in verse 9. Then came one of the seven angels who had seven bowls full of seven last plagues and spoke to me, saying, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper clear as crystal. See what he says he's going to show him? He's going to show him the bride. He is going to show him the wife of the Lamb. And he takes him and he shows him Jerusalem. He takes him and he shows him the heavenly Jerusalem, God's people. That's the bride of the Lamb. That is the wife of the Lamb. But now let's jump down to verse 27. But nothing unclean will ever enter it, nor anyone who does what is detestable or false, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Who's going to be in this city? Who is going to be in the heavenly Jerusalem that is the wife of the Lamb? Not anyone detestable, not anyone who is outside of the registry. Only those who are enrolled. Only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life, that they will be in this city. They will be wed to the Lamb. That's who God is talking about in Isaiah. It says, those recorded for life in Jerusalem. Not the physical city, spiritual Jerusalem. Those whose names are recorded for having life, for living. Now, we need to come back to Isaiah and work with these two concepts. They're called holy. They're recorded for life in this city. Verse 4. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and cleansed the bloodstains of Jerusalem from its midst, by a spirit of judgment and by a spirit of burning. How is it God says they're going to be called holy? How is it they are going to be recorded for life? He says, I'm going to take them, and I am going to wash away their filth. I am going to cleanse their filthiness from them. I'm going to take the blood that they are covered in, and I am going to clean them. Now, I do not want you to miss those words that Isaiah uses. Filth, blood stains. See someone covered head to toe in absolute sludge, and you throw blood stains on top of that. And what do you think of that? You look at that and you say, get as far away from me as you can and as close to a shower as you can. And after you take care of that filthy issue, then come on and we can have a conversation. Then we can get close to each other here. I want you to see what God said he's going to do. I'm going to take that filth and I'm going to wash it away from you. I am going to take care of the problem. I will tell you, having a daughter, having a child helps me to see this so much more and to understand it, the love of a father that things otherwise you never would have touched in your life. You didn't want to have anything to do with it. But I'll tell you what, here's an innocent baby, and she's dirty. And she needs to be clean. She needs to be taken care of. And God sees a people. He wants to be his. And I see how filthy and disgusting and blood-stained you are. And I want you to be mine. So what am I going to do? I'm going to clean you. What am I going to do? I'm going to take care of the problem. I will clean you so that now you can be set apart. So now you can be unto my purpose. I'll tell you what, fatherhood has taught me about that too. Tara's filthy and dirty, and I clean her. I don't let her go back to the source of the filth. I'm going to have to give her another bath, and I don't want to do that. Don't go back. No, we're not going to go. I'm going to clean you. Now, don't go back. You're going to be holy. You're going to be distinct. You're going to be set apart from that filth so that I can write you down in this book and you can be a recipient of life. Now, as I put this into that language, we might not expect where God goes with this next, but God shows us exactly the means by which he accomplishes this, where he says, the way I'm going to cleanse you, the way I am going to wash you, is I'm going to bring a judgment and a purging. There is going to be this complete removal of filth from Jerusalem. Again, reminiscent of some of Zechariah's visions. You remember when he has the vision in the first part of chapter 5 of that scroll, where on one side of the scroll there is a curse that goes out against stealing. And on the other side of the scroll there's a curse that goes out against swearing falsely. And as this curse falls, the house of the thief and the house of the one who swears falsely crumbles and breaks down. And then in the vision, where he sees the basket being carried away, and he's wondering what's going on there, and the woman pops her head out. What's the woman in the basket? And he's told, it's wickedness. Wickedness is in the basket. And so they take the lid of the basket and they pop it down on it, and they fly her off into the land of Shinar, into Babylon, because God says wickedness isn't going to be in my land. It's going to be removed. And that's going to be done with judgment. I'm going to make judgment against wickedness, and I'm going to take that out of my land. And if wickedness is to be found in you, I'm going to burn that out of you. I'm going to purge that out of you. I am reminded and I hope I used the correct terminology here, but when one has an accident and there is debris in the wounds inside of them, and they have to go into the hospital, and in order for them to take care of this wound, they've got to get all of that debris out. I believe the term is debridement there, where they've got to scrub that stuff out of the wound, because you got to get it out before any kind of healing is going to occur. And God says, I want to scrub it out of you, because we've got to get the filth and the blood stain out before we can have the healing and the purity of a peoples who will be holy, who will be set apart as mine, who will be recorded as having life in my city. Let me remind you how I opened the point up, because I don't want to lose sight of it either. God says, I'm doing this as a loving Father. I care about you, and I want you to be mine, so I will cleanse you, and I will set you apart as holy, and I will record you as having life. But I'm going to do it with judgment, and I am going to do it with burning, with purging, so that you can be pure and I can be with you. Verses 5 and 6. Then the Lord will create over the whole site of Mount Zion and over her assemblies a cloud by day and smoke and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For over all the glory there will be a canopy. There will be a booth for shade by day from the heat, and for a refuge and a shelter from the storm and rain. You will see that Isaiah borrows and powerfully borrows from the picture of the Exodus as God's people are being led out. And there is the pillar of fire, and there is the cloud to overshadow them, so that they can see and they can know God is leading them. And in God's leading them, He is with them and He is protecting them. And God returns back to that language as He talks about His spiritual city, as He talks about His people, to say, I am with you. My presence is with you, and I am leading you. And we're going to get down to verse 6 here in just a minute. I am protecting you. But here is something absolutely fascinating that I don't know. I didn't check every translation that could be checked, but I do not know that an English translation brings this concept out very well at the end of verse 5, where he says, this glory having been established, this glory set forth of the Lord's presence with us, he says, over it there will be a canopy. Now, if you look this word up, even in a Bible dictionary, a Strong's, or one that will give you an Old Testament definition, you're not going to find this. It's not a definition in and of itself that they give for this word. But Hebrew scholars, commenting on this word, they say this is not the general word for a canopy. This is not just any old canopy that you're just going to set up outside and you are going to sit under. The two other times this word is used in the Bible, Psalm 19:5, you will see that the bridegroom is in it. And in Joel 2:16, you will see that the bride is in it. Now, the New King James in Joel uses dressing room there, but the New American Standard and English Standard both use the word chamber there, that they're within a chamber, but it's this word. And so looking at this, I want you to see it's not a canopy unique to the bride or unique to the bridegroom. This is a canopy that both of them are under. And the Hebrew scholars commenting on this word, they say this is a wedding canopy, that's really what this word is trying to drive home and trying to get to there, where it's talking about the canopy under which the nuptials would take place and the bride and the bridegroom partake or receive the nuptial blessing. And so I think that this is huge to the picture here, where we see God's glory with his people under the wedding canopy. Now, do you see why I said a moment ago Revelation 21 would become so significant? What did we say that this spiritual Jerusalem was? The bride of the Lamb? The wife of the Lamb, this place where the marriage relationship is coming together. And what does God say here in his presence with his people? What's going to be above? The wedding canopy is going to sit above the glory of God's presence with his people and with his presence. Now we bring in verse 6. There will be a booth for shade by day from the heat, and for a refuge and a shelter from the storm and rain. Here, God is joined to his people, and he is our protection. I know I put there on the screen, but just so I can really drive home here, he's working a little bit with redeemed Israel who would come to enter into marriage relationship with him, and the hope that would be to them that they would attain unto this. But as we use the language of the spiritual Jerusalem, as we consider Revelation 21, we know that is not isolated to this Israel. That's us. And God says he enjoins himself to us. He sets his glory over us. He leads us. He protects us under this marriage canopy, that we would have this relationship with him, that we would have his presence with us, and to recognize what a blessing that is to be found in the glorious branch of the Lord, who brings about the renewal, that this might be possible, that we would be recreated and wed to the Lamb. As we bring these things to a close then this evening, and we talk about our being wed to the Lamb, you will read in a number of passages in our being betrothed to him, we have been called to be blameless and without spot. When the bridegroom comes to fetch his bride, he does not want to come and find that we have been unfaithful. He does not want to come and find that we have not been faithful in our promise of relationship to him. He expects to come and find a chaste bride. He expects to come and find a bride who is given over to him. And so we leave with the question, have you been? When he comes back and he looks at you as his bride, what will he say? Well done, good and faithful servant. Or will he say, no, Get away from me, you servant of iniquity, you servant of lawlessness. We're supposed to be in a relationship, and I don't even know you. Your name's not written in the book. As you consider your life, your way of living, what would he say? If it's not to welcome you, if it's not to enjoin himself in the consummation of marriage to you, won't you change that? Won't you repent, turn away, and turn back to our God? And if there is anything at all that we can do to help you with that, won't you come while we stand and sing the song select?